Okay, Nicolas.
Yes, so that we can share it later. Right?
Thanks, Oli and Selma. Yeah, and hello everyone. I'm Nicolas Sotojo. I'm a policy and advocacy officer headed for EZ. So I'm going to quickly present to you some of the main steps for the People's Scorecard process, but also its overall approach. But first, let me start with sharing with you some of the learnings that we can take away from the first half of the implementation process of the SDGs up to now. First of all, from a institutional and participation point of view, it has to be said that a majority of countries now do indeed provide institutional arrangement, at least some kind of institutional arrangement for governance of the implementation process. But it has to be said that the quality and depth of engagement within these institutional arrangements tends to be lacking. Although there have been some interesting entry points, there are primarily linked to the progress assessment processes. That's the formulation of the VNRs, basically. And regarding these VNR formulation processes, although these processes do indeed include consultations with stakeholders, with specific segments of the population, and even in some countries with consultations that involve the wider citizenry. And these are indeed organized more or less systematically within VNR processes. It has to be said that the results from these consultations tend to be only partially included in the VNRs, if they are included at all in the VNRs. So that's a little bit of a limitation. And also it has to be said that these kind of consultations within VNR processes rarely are translated into broader and more stable spaces for policy dialogue. For policy dialogue within the policy making or monitoring processes. So based on these points 1 and 2, it has to be said that the effect and the impact of the SDGs regarding the institutional changements and broader participation, changes in political practices, etc., has been very limited up to now. And regarding integrated approaches, you know, these approaches that are promoted by the SDGs that involve incorporating different dimensions of the sustainable development concept into policymaking and decision making. These schemes for integrated approaches tend to be only discursive in nature or superficial at best in most countries. Regarding the specific monitoring and review processes, has to be said that most countries do provide a baseline of data, but there are still many challenges regarding data availability and data transparency regarding the way data is actually generated at the national level and the way these processes are actually reliable, transparent, and open, and that's worldwide. I mean, it's cross-cutting from developed and developing countries alike. Regarding means of implementation, has to be said that there has been a reduction regarding means of implementation in financial. As you know, that's linked, of course, with the effects of the pandemic, also the war in Ukraine, of course, and the whole inflationary context worldwide, the interest rate hikes that have significantly reduced access to funding for countries and significantly reduce thus their fiscal space. But also there's the background that is also linked to the level of asymmetries and inequities that are embedded within the global financial architecture that are systemic in nature and haven't really been addressed and or solved by the international community since 2015, the launch of the SDGs, and that has, of course, also impacted the resource availability in many countries. Although there has been some interesting ideas that have been floated, these are still far from being actually implemented still. So from all these elements, we could say that there's limited demonstrable progress at this moment regarding the transformative potential for the 2030 agenda. But of course, it is within our reach to try to contribute to the process as civil society, of course. And you can find a little bit more insight and data in the different reports that we have been able to elaborate recently. The first one is the People's Scorecard Summary Report from 2022. That is available in our website. And the other one is the Progressing National SDG Implementation Report. That is a report that is proposed every year by a consortium of international NGOs. And that is based, of course, in an analysis of the official VNRs, but also an analysis of the different spotlight reports that are published by civil society around the world. So it's a very interesting report that is available in this dedicated website. Regarding the support that A4Z actually provides for national civil societies around the world, has to be said that A4Z supports around 20 national coalitions in VNR parallel reporting in all the major regions in the world. And our website do host a wide range of CSO reports from every year since 2016, plus the summary reports for the People's Scorecard. They're all available for you to consult, of course. Regarding the approach for the People's Scorecard, it has to be said that since this year is a bit of a special year within the implementation process, we are providing some modifications, some changes to the approach of the People's Scorecard, because normally the People's Scorecard focuses on an assessment of the depth and scope of the implementation process at the national level. So it looks at how conducive are policy environments at the national level for sustainable development, what's the level institutional capacities that are made available by the different governments for SDG implementation, and also looks at how inclusive and participatory are the different implementation processes at the national level. But this year, since 2023 marks the halfway point in the implementation process, the People's Scorecard will aim to take stock of the tangible progress made on SDG implementation in each country. So this year, the scorecard approach will focus on assessing the perception from civil society in each country around the actual results of the implementation process for each SDG, and at an aggregated level for the SDG framework as a whole. Regarding the People's Scorecard process and its many steps, we could speak of 6 steps that range from forming a broad CSO coalition, conducting a survey online and or in person, assessing the quality of national implementation process, convening community dialogues, community-based dialogues, validation of the scorecard results and the spotlight report, and also follow-up post-VNR, of course. So we'll go in a little bit of detail for each one of these steps. So the base one, the most basic one, the first one is forming a broad civil society coalition of the 2030 agenda. We know that it is to some extent the case in most countries already, but we do believe that it's an interesting opportunity for each national CSO coalition in this context of applying the People's Scorecard and conducting a survey and a range of consultations with civil society in order to try to evaluate progress on SDG implementation, to actually try to, I think you should mute yourself. Yeah, yeah, thank you. To try to reach to a wider range of organization sectors, thematic networks, community-based and grassroots organizations, in order to have the broader range of perspective as possible within your consultation processes, and try to have the most solid and strong voice that is actually conveyed through your independent reports, spotlight reports. So the other question you maybe should ask as coalition is, have you prepared a previous independent report or tried to participate in a VNR process? So which are the key takeaways that you can take from those processes and how that could improve this process that you are launching right now, etc. Regarding inclusiveness, are you able to bring together a wide range of community views to leave no one behind? The idea here is to try to involve, as I said, different sector and many different sectors as possible and all different constituency groups in order to have a balance regarding geographic inclusivity, age, disability, etc. Regarding the leaving no one behind principle and its application within the consultation process, we do have somewhat of a list of as a reference, minimal reference of groups to include in your consultation process, of course, but that can be adjusted given your own national context, of course. But this basic list would include, of course, women and girls, children and young people, indigenous people, older persons, persons with disabilities, people discriminated by work of descent, by geographic area, people from the LGBTQI community, small-scale farmers, ethnic and religious groups, migrants, refugees, etc. Regarding the second step, which is the assessment of the overall national implementation process with a specific focus on the levels of engagement within that process. The first element that you should look at and try to analyze is what is the type of governance system that has been established in your country. So look at what that would imply looking at what's the nature of this governance system. So is it government centered? Is it multi-stakeholder in nature? If it's multi-stakeholder in nature, you should try to look at how, to what extent there is quality and depth to the mechanisms for civil society participation within these. But you could also look at the mandate and the actual functions that the governance system tries to fulfill within the implementation process. So is it for general oversight of the implementation process? Is it to provide some kind of policy orientation, political orientation to the process? Is it for developing planning instruments like development plans, strategies, action plans that are based on the SDGs, of course? Or is the mandate specific to monitoring and review of the implementation process? Is it a combination of all of these different elements, etc.? So that will be interesting to try to analyze as a specific point. And regarding also the mainstreaming and integration of the 2020 agenda and the SDGs into national planning tools, public policies and programs, you could look at how the 3 dimensions of sustainable development are actually embedded and integrated within these kind of policy tools at the national level. Also regarding the specific monitoring mechanisms at the national level, you can look at how transparent and inclusive are the established monitoring mechanisms in place, etc. So regarding the third step, which is the actual scoring process for the entire SDG framework for each one of the 17 goals, the main vessel there is to try to conduct a perception-based survey, which is centered around the SDG targets as main reference. And the idea with actually using targets as main reference and not the SDG indicators is that the SDG indicators tend to have a narrower scope in what they're trying to convey and to measure within each SDG, whereas targets tend to be a little bit more broad-based and allow respondents to actually have a broader and more global perspective of the content of each one of the SDGs. And so it makes the whole rating or scoring process a little bit easier in order to provide a single a global score for each one of the SDGs. And so the idea is to actually, for each respondent, to be able to give a score that with a scale that ranges from -5 to +5, which is a scale that allows respondents to actually convey whether they perceive if there is backsliding in the implementation process, or whether they perceive that there is actual positive progress within the implementation process. And the way to disseminate the survey online, you can do it through different means. It could be through email by sharing a scorecard template in Word format, or by through an online survey. We do have a Google form template that we can share with you. If you see an online survey, that's something that would be conducive to have a wide range of responses from your civil society peers. And also you can apply the survey in paper format at the in-person consultation that you will be organizing in the context of these projects. And a very specific and important point to underline regarding the conducting the survey, the scorecard survey, is that the idea is to assess all 17 SDGs. So each one of the SDGs, and try to avoid cherry picking, because the idea is to have a general perspective of the entire SDG framework that could and more detail of each SDG that could inform your spotlight reports analysis, of course. And the idea, and for that, you'll likely have to target a set of CSOs working in different sectors that it's varied and diverse enough in order to be able to cover each one of the SDGs as much as possible, and to have a decent amount of responses for each one of the SDGs, so that to make it result as relevant as possible, of course. Regarding the fourth step, which would be convene community-based consultations, where possible and within your institutional and budgetary capacities, try to organize 1 or 2 subnational meetings, or at least 1 national meeting, bringing together a cross-section of organizations working on the key topic of the SDGs, and specifically constituency-based, community-based organizations that actually represent historically marginalized communities within your national contexts. And the format for this can be adaptable, of course. The main idea of this is to gather grassroots and historically marginalized communities' views on how the SDGs impact their daily lives, and collect their specific demands regarding your own national development process in order to convey those within your spotlight reports afterwards. And regarding the fifth step, which is the validation of the scorecard and spotlight report results, of course, depending on your institutional and budgetary capacities, would be interesting to try to convene at least 1 national meeting in order to validate the draft scorecard and the findings from the assessment of the national implementation process, and to share the drafts with your national partners in order to enable a chance for feedback and validation by your civil society peers. And once a consensus is reached, the report can of course be shared with the government and used for wider advocacy and policy dialogue with your governments. And of course, depending also on your institutional and budgetary capacities, would be interesting to also try to launch an event in order to feature a dialogue with, initiate a dialogue with key government officials, ideally ahead of the HLPF, but it can be a little bit after too, as a good way to ensure accountability in the process, of course. And regarding the 6th step, which is a follow-up after the VNR at the national level, also depending on your organizational and budgetary capacities, try to keep the momentum going by either organizing quarterly meetings of your national multi-sectoral coalition, but also try to set out your own action plan on delivery of the 3030 agenda. Also try to develop independent evidence base. Also, of course, it's a pretty complex process that demands a lot of resources, of course, but would be an idea. Also, advocacy-wise, try to keep regular engagement with your relevant ministries, parliamentary committees, your institutional mechanism for SDG implementation, of course, national development planning, budgetary processes, etc., where available and if possible, of course. And also another interesting idea to keep the momentum would be to try to engage with the UN resident coordinator's office, the UN country teams in each country, because even though it's a little bit variable depending on the country, the UN resident coordinator's office still tends to be a pretty valuable ally that could help you and support you in your either advocacy processes, but also regarding public sensitization or even regarding trainings, etc. So, okay. This is a little bit of an overview of the People's Scorecard process and approach. Of course, will remain available in case you have any further any specific questions. And other than that, beyond this, we'll be, of course, ready to support you and be with you in every step of the way when you will be implementing your projects. So thank you very much. Back to you, Oli.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Nicolas. And welcome to those who have been joining. Apologies if there was some confusion on the link. We have been trying to make it easier by giving out a direct link so you can log straight into this meeting, and please do share that with your colleagues who are still trying to join. So as Nicolas has highlighted, really what we hope to do with each of you over the coming months is those key steps towards hosting a consultation across civil society in your country, and based on that consultation, to be able to provide a parallel report and a People's Scorecard. And the parallel report you can write in your own context, highlighting some of the particular challenges and needs that may come up in your context. And for the scorecard, that's the bit that we hope you'll be able to give a scoring from -5 to +5 on each of the goals. And the useful thing about having that scoring is then we can compare between countries, and we can help to give you some infographics that can be helpful as well in your advocacy. So that scoring is quite important for us. And we also have an online Google form where you can upload all of your scores once you've had your consultation. So that's to give an overview. So now I can pass over to Anselmo. I'm sure you have more that you'd like to add in the context of this region. Over to you, Anselmo.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Since we have 12 participants from 5 countries, can we have a time to introduce briefly who are from? So we have 3 participants from Tajikistan, Khrusheda, Kurinso, Rabat. Could you say hello to those from Tajikistan? Can you say hello?
Hello.
Hello, yes, I'm from Tajikistan.
Okay. So are you from all the same organization from Tajikistan? Did you know each other?
Region, yes, we are all 3 from one region, from South region.
Okay. So some of you attended the training program, right? Elsa, Wakala, Wakesiosi, right? Your face are very familiar, you know?
Yes.
So welcome.
I, Rahbar, and this Khursheda and Khairin. So we have finished with the program.
Yeah. So I'm so happy. You know?
So
now is the time to practice what you have learned from training program. So this is really good, the tool to practice what you have learned, those few years ago. So welcome once again. So
can I ask, sorry, Anselmo,
yes,
can I
please.
just briefly ask Rabah, has there been any dialogue so far with the government? What's been the process on the VNR so far in your country?
I have learned that the government already sent a letter to UN saying that they will provide their report on July this year on VNR, and the letter is on the UN portal. And also different organizations here, so they in the coalition trying to write an alternative report on SUDO, separately on different SDGs.
And so do you think there'll be the opportunity to bring together that report with all the SDGs covered?
Really difficult task, I have to say it, but we'll try. We have to see. We have to check our proposal, what we have written. It differs, yeah, a little bit for Sheda and Farini. So we will try to do.
Okay, great. But we can also follow up separately with you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the next country. We have a big group 4 from Mongolia. Can you say hello, all our friends from Mongolia?
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Hello.
Hello.
Wow. So you did a fantastic job last year. This is a continuation of what you did last year. Could you please, you are all the same organization?
No, we are different organizations, but we are all member of the CSO's Coalition on SDGs, Mongolian CSO's Coalition on SDGs. So I think we are here 4 organizations, and each of them were responsible for one SDG. So yeah. So actually we had like 13 member expert group, which actually were conducting this scoring.
Okay.
Consulting with the different also organizations who are working on SDG 1 or SDG 2 or SDG 3, etc. You know, so that we did this way all 17 SDG scoring except SDG 14, since we don't
14,
have this.
no ocean.
Yeah.
Mongolia
Yeah.
landlocked country.
Yeah.
I would like to specially request our Mongolian friends, you know, that our friend from Tajikistan, this is the first time they are doing this people score, but Mongolia, you did the last year. So I think it's we organize the follow webinar, because today is introduction, first time for peer learning, peer learning, So those who have done last year, like Mongolia and Uzbekistan, we will invite them to share, to mutual support.
Having meeting.
Right? So welcome Mongolia team once again. We have 4. So now let's go to Fiji. First time Pacific. We have 2 persons from Fiji, Andre and Josiah. Can you say hello? Can you please introduce?
Only my background is quite noisy. I'm not quite sure if I'm coming here and if the background is not right. So, but I posted my comments on the chat and I heard actually.
Okay, Andre. Okay, there's a connection problem. So now then let's go to Vietnam. We have
Can I just add, Anselmo? Yeah, it's great to have the colleagues on from Fiji. I know sometimes the time zones make it tricky for us to connect. So for Andre and Josiah, if you would like to have a separate call, we're also very happy. We know that Fiji recently had elections. It'd be good to hear how things are going there now. Thank you so much, and great to have you on the call.
Okay, special welcome once again. So now let's go to Vietnam. We have 2 participants, Lin and Long Nguyen. Can you say hello? Yeah.
Hello everyone. So my name is Ling, and I also have my colleague Long here. We are from Management and Sustainable Development Institute, MSD. And we are coordinating the CSO process in Vietnam, engaging in Vienna in Vietnam. So last month, at the end of last month, Vietnamese government has just released a draft Vienna reports, and we are in the consultation process. So that's like we together with other NGOs like coordinate some kinds of data collection, comments from CSO, and also organize several consultation workshops with CSO, and also some kind of vulnerable group of children, youth, and people with disability. So we have to submit the kind of comment and statement next week. So just like 3 weeks for public consultation.
Very fast, very
good. Yeah, anyways, as like Vietnam, Vietnam's the report of Vietnam cover on 17 SDG. So in this way, it's more convenient for us to implement the people's scorecard. However, like there is also very challenging because like we test it with some kind of online survey with the kind of CSO when we collecting the comments from CSO for Vietnam report. But it's challenging because like CSO representatives, they can only know and can evaluate some of SDG in within their working area or with their target group, rather than like cover on 17 SDG and all indicator. So I think it's also a challenging task when we like work more intensively to evaluate on like more than like 200 indicators in the SDG framework in Vietnam. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. So as I said, we have a, if you have any the question or difficult, you can have a bilateral meeting with Nicola and also with me and Oli anytime. And also we organize the peer review, collective, something like this today, So we want to accompany you. So we know it's a very challenging task because especially in Vietnam, you are doing this one first time, right? People's Scorecard first time, but it's challenging, but I think it was why, to invest your time and energy. You will learn so much from this exercise, so next year will be much easier, So welcome once again, our friend from Vietnam. So let's go to Maldives. Maldives, I see the two, Amina, are you alone from Maldives or one more? I see the one from iPhone.
It's from Maldives.
Okay, could you please introduce Amina and say hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, Imad, you can go on.
Okay. I'm Imad. I represent Maldives NGO Federation. I'm a vice president of Maldives NGO Federation. We are also in the process because with the government also doing consultation with CSOs, reviewing the report. And we are also planning to have consultation with the CSOs because the Maldives NGO Federation is the kind of umbrella of, the NGOs. We have like Maldives NGO Federation. So we are also in the process, and my colleague Nizam is actually dealing with you on this. I joined on behalf of him. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Can you please write down your name in the chat box so that I can put in the records, the minutes? So we have a Nizam, Amina, and then Shiro, 3 persons from Maldives. So special welcome. And then is there anyone from Timor-Leste? I don't see the name from Timor-Leste. Okay, so we have about now 14 participants from 5 countries: Tajikistan, Maldives, Vietnam, Mongolia, and Fiji. So do you have any question about presentation? Nicola made a presentation, just the introductory one, the process and content, what we are supposed to do. So feel free to ask any question. You can say, or you can write in the chat box.
Can I say?
Yes,
sorry. Very nice presentation. When I looked at the Nicola's presentation, they came out a question. How long should it take the implementation of each step? And has any country gone through all of these steps before, so we can look at their work, because many steps look to me very difficult to implement. For example, to organize a national consultation with CSOs.
Nicola, can you answer the question?
Well, of course, what was presented was a little bit of the maximalist, let's say, version of the process, but of course it's adaptable to the different conditions that can arise in each national context, of course. So it depends. I mean, the fact is, from a material point of view, the funding that we are able to provide is relatively limited. So in order to be able to fully take on every one of the steps, it will probably require for each national coalition to have some complementary funding, I would imagine, from other sources. But at the minimum, would be interesting to be able to, for each national coalition, to at least conduct the scorecard-based survey, and the possibility of doing it online, if it's something that would be useful and applicable in your national context. It doesn't require many resources other than be able to disseminate the online survey as widely as possible. And personally, I can help you with the data treatment, is what would be necessary. So going through the different scores that are provided by respondents and be able to constitute averages for each SDG, etc. That I can help you with for sure. And regarding the sequence for it, well, it's also relatively adaptable. I mean, in an ideal world, would be interesting for each national coalitions to be able to implement each one of the steps before the HLPF in July. So be able to conduct the survey, have the results, organize the community-based consultations, and be able to write the spotlight report before the HLPF, and be able to present it in the context of the HLPF in July. But that's of course something to aim at, aspirational, let's say, but is of course adaptable within the different contexts and realities that you have to deal with in your national contexts. So the idea, the minimum with this process would be to hopefully be able to conduct the scorecard survey and have the results for the HLPF. That would be let's say the mandatory minimum, and hopefully be able to conduct at least one of the community-based consultations within that time frame before the HLPF. But for the development of the spotlight report in itself, even though, as I said, ideally it would be interesting to have it in the context of the HLPF, that's of course an adaptable time frame for the spotlight report, and you can of course take some time after the HLPF to actually be able to develop your spotlight report. And what can be interesting about that type of approach, that type of sequence, is that if you decide to develop your spotlight report after the HLPF, you will likely be able to know and to actually be able to read the actual official report, the actual official VNR from your country, and incorporate that in your reflection and process for these spotlight report, and be able to actually provide some specific answers from civil society to some of the specific points that can be that you can try to address from the VNR. So I don't know if the government made some kind of statement in the VNR or provided some kind of assertions in the VNR that you would like to contest to some level, that would be possible to do. Probably if you wait for after the HLPF to develop your spotlight report more easily. So that would be a way to approach things. But as I say, it's a pretty open process, an open approach that can be adaptable to the different national context. And as I say, we will be ready to accompany you, as Anselmo said, and to support you in every step of the way to see how you can actually configure your sequences and your way to approach the process. And yeah.
Can I just add? Yeah. I just want to add, because I think perhaps we're overcomplicating it. It doesn't need to be so complicated. It's really the concept is that you have a meeting, and we understand that in some countries having an open meeting may not be possible. So I think that for that we can be flexible depending on how easy it is to actually physically meet, whether there are restrictions on that. But that's the first step. And the second step, as Nicolas said, is simply to gather the inputs for the survey and for the scorecard. And that really is the most important part. So we do need that section to be completed before the HLPF, because that gives us the scoring, and that is where you would look to get different inputs depending on the expertise in the different goals. So for example, gender on goal 5, or experts on education, or experts on water. So that part, you don't need to necessarily meet to do that. That can be done online. And really it's about trying to make sure that you identify who's active on each goal, and encouraging them to fill in the online survey. Once you have that, then yes, as Nicolas says, the final step to actually put together a spotlight report, hopefully would not be too time consuming. That should build on the evidence that you've already gathered through the consultation. And yes, for that final step, the actual spotlight report, we can be a little bit flexible, although our preference is to get those in before the HLPF as well, so that we can share them. It's also in your interest, if you want to have an impact, that's the time when there'll be interest from the UN and others. So I think if you just think of it as those 3 steps, so some kind of meeting, if possible in person, secondly, the consultation survey, and then thirdly, the report.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Can I introduce, we have 2 participants, Uzbekistan, like Mongolia, they did a people's scorecard last year. And it's your neighboring country, Russian speaking, so they can also help you, you know. So can I invite our friend from Uzbekistan to say hello, the Dilia. Dilia.
Yes, hello everyone. Hello, Anselmo.
Hello.
I'm very glad to see you, everyone, to here, and thank you very much for invitation to take part, take part in this webinar. Yes, actually, 2 years ago, Uzbekistan had first experience on preparing and regarding VNR, and this year Uzbekistan planning to
the VNR, Uzbekistan VNR.
Yes, we're planning to present the second one, VNR, and a lot of works have done. Yesterday, Yükseliş, as a NGO, met with Minister of Economy and UNRC representatives, and also Institute of Macroeconomic and Regional Studies, and discussed holding of the public discussions with civil society organizations and NGO. And as you know, in the first experience, Yükseliş and the UNRC representative together organized public discussion of first VNR, gathered comments and suggestions from civil society organization, and tried to put these comments and suggestions in to reflect these comments in VNR first. And in this year, in mid, if I'm not mistaken, in the middle of April or in the early of May, we are planning also to take a public discussion with civil society organization, also with the participation of parliamentary representative commissions and international representatives. So this task, this plan we have discussed yesterday only. So we are just writing program and draft of programs, and regarding of people scorecards that we also took in winter, if I'm not mistaken, my colleague Shohrukh can present about this experience of Uzbekistan. Yükseliş held people scorecard first time, and yes, we are glad to share with this experience, and now that's all. So let me give the floor to my colleague.
No, sure. Sorry. We have only 1 hour for this webinar. So we organize the next time the webinar again for peer learning. Then I think you can present your experience today. I think so. Just I put in the chat box. You're supposed to organize the 1 week training the first week of May, right? With the
yes.
GCS. So I'm supposed to go there. So my idea is when I go to Tashkent, your Yükseliş training program, maybe I can go 1 day to Dushanbe, Tajikistan, to have a 1 day program for our friends for Tajikistan, Okay, so let's
Anselmo, you can come directly to Suvd region, which is close to Tashkent by car. Okay. So it will take you only 2 hours to get to Khujan. Where Khurshid, Khairiniso, and I in this place. So
okay,
you don't need to go to Dushanbe, to Khujan.
Okay, even better. So let's discuss. Today I can help you, to prepare this one. Okay, only almost time's up, right? So any final concrete remark? So anyway, as I said, we will organize webinar.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, no, just to say, I think it's been very, very useful to have the first conversation, and we really appreciate all of your questions and inputs. We know that there's a lot of experience already in the region. As Anselmo says, many of you have already done a scorecard before. Some of you are coming to it for the first time, and we're really glad to also help to create those opportunities for peer learning, as Anselmo says. And count on us, Nicolas and myself. We're also available to discuss any more details that you would like to go through. We've received your proposals from most of you, and we'll be reviewing those. And if we have any questions, we'll also come back to you. And we hope to be able to also arrange those that small grant within the coming weeks to help you in that organizing and preparing of your reports. And hopefully, perhaps some of you might also make it to the HLPF when it comes in July. So thank you. And yeah, I'll pass back to Anselmo, and we look forward to keeping in touch.
Okay, so before we end, let's have a photo. It's a good start. Okay, let's give a blessing and energy to all so that we can do something together. This year is a midpoint. This is a good preparation for second SG Summit. Can you open your camera if you don't mind? let's have the energy. Okay, good energy and the blessing. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Okay, welcome. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Let's keep in touch. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Bye.
goodbye, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.